All then shall change, a magic order come, overtopping this mechanical universe. A mightier race shall inhabit the mortal's world. On nature's luminous tops, on the spirit's ground, the Superman shall reign as king of life. But first, high truth must set her feet on earth, and man aspire to the eternal's light, and all his members feel the Spirit's touch, and all his life obey an inner force. This too shall be, so a new life shall come. Nature shall live to manifest secret God. The Spirit shall take up the human plane. This earthly life become the life divine. The measure of that subtle music ceased. Down with a hurried, swimming, floating lapse, through unseen world and bottomless spaces forth, sank like a star the soul of Savitri. Pursuing her in her fall, implacably sweet, a face was over her which seemed a youth's symbol of all the beauty I see not, crowned as with peacock plumes of gorgeous hue, framing a sapphire whose heart disturbing smile insatiably attracted to delight, voluptuous to the embraces of her soul. Changed in its shape, yet rapturously the same, it grew a woman's dark and beautiful, like a moon night with drifting star gemmed cloud, a shadowy glory and a stormy depth, turbulent in will and terrible in love, eyes in which nature's blind ecstatic light sprang from some spirit's passionate contempt, missioned her to the whirling dance of earth. She kept within her strong, embosoming soul, like a flower hidden in the heart of spring, the soul of Satyava, drawn down by her, inextricably heaven in a thronging flight, soared past her as she fell, then all the blind and near attraction of the earth compelled. Fearful rapidities of downward bliss. Then, from a timeless plain that watches time, the spirit gazed out upon destiny. The prophet moment covered limitless space and cast into the heart of hurrying time a diamond light of the eternal speech, a crimson seed of God's felicity, a glance from the gaze fell of undying love.
Savitri has been conversing with the Supreme Being, and he was asking her to ascend into this supramental realm with Divine, and she refused, insisted that she should return to earth with Divine to uplift the earth on the earth with this supramental life. And the Supreme Being has agreed, and to fulfill her demand. And now he prophesizing what shall come as a result of her prayer. And now, we began reading last time his prophecy of what would come. And I'm going to reread that, and then at the top of page 705 to review what we finished off with last time. But when the hour of the divine draws near, the mighty mother shall take birth in time, and God be born into the human clay, in forms made ready by your human lives. Then shall the truth supreme be given to me. There is a being beyond the being of man, immeasurable, past into many forms, a miracle of the multitudinous things. There is a consciousness mind cannot touch, nor its thought reveal.
It has no home on earth, no center in man, yet is the source of all things thought and done, the fount of the creation and its works. It is the origin of all truth here, the sun orb of mind's fragmentary rays, infinity's heaven that spills the rain of God, the immense that calls to man to expand the spirit, the wide aim that justifies his narrow attempts, a channel for the little he tastes of bliss. Some shall be made the glory's receptacles and vehicles of the eternal's luminous power. These are the high forerunners, the heads of time, the great deliverers of earthbound mind, the high transfigurers of human clay, the firstborn of a new supernal race. The incarnate dual power shall open God's door. Eternal supermind touch earthly time. The Superman shall wake in mortal man and manifest the hidden demigod, or grow into the God light and God force, revealing the secret deity in the cave. Then shall the earth be touched by the Supreme, his bright unveiled mind and heart, and force the life and act to interpret his inexpressible mystery in a heavenly alphabet of divinity's signs. His living cosmic spirit shall enring, annulling the decree of death and pain, erasing the formulas of the ignorance with the deep meaning of beauty and life's hid sense, the being ready for immortality, his regard crossing infinity's mystic waves, bring back to nature her early joy to live, the metered heartbeats of a lost delight, the cry of a forgotten ecstasy, the dance of the first world creating bliss. So that's where we left off. But then let's go back to that earlier passage that this one reminds us of on page 343. And 44. Let's see, is that right? Okay. Okay, and I'll just read that. About halfway down, a giant dance of Shiva toward the past. There was a thunder as of worlds that fall. Earth was o'errun with fire and the roar of death, clamoring to slay a world his hunger had made. There was a clangor of destruction's wings. The Titan's battle cry was in my ears. Alarm and rumor shook the armored night. I saw the omnipotence flaming pioneers over the heavenly verge which turns towards life, come crowding down the amber stairs of birth, forerunners of a divine multitude. Out of the paths of the morning star they came into the little room of mortal life. I saw them cross the twilight of an age, the sun-eyed children of a marvelous dawn, the great creators with wide brows of calm, the massive barrier breakers of the world, and wrestlers with destiny in her lists of will, the laborers in the quarries of the gods, the messengers of the incommunicable, the architects of immortality. Into the fallen human sphere they came, faces that wore the immortal's glory still, voices that communed still with the thoughts of God, bodies made beautiful by the Spirit's light, carrying the magic word, the mystic fire, carrying the Dionysian cup of joy, approaching eyes of a diviner man, lips chanting an unknown anthem of the soul, feet echoing in the corridors of time. High priests of wisdom, sweetness, might, and bliss, discoverers of beauty's sunlit ways, and swimmers of love's laughing fiery floods, and dancers within rapture's golden doors. Their tread one day shall change the suffering earth and justify the light on nature's face. And now, before we begin, I'll just read a little bit of from the Life Divine. That describes this in his prose. So this is in one of the final, or the final chapter, The Divine Life. And it begins on page 1067. So here he describes kind of the coming of the divine life and its nature and its conditions. So about halfway down on 1067, it is then this spiritual fulfillment of the urge to individual perfection and an inner completeness of being that we mean first when we speak of a divine life. It is the first essential condition of a perfected life on earth. And we are therefore right in making the utmost possible individual perfection our first supreme business. The perfection of the spiritual and pragmatic relation of the individual with all around him is our second preoccupation. The solution of this second desideratum lies in a complete universality and oneness with all life upon earth, which is the other concomitant result of an evolution into the Gnostic consciousness and nature. But there still remains the third desideratum, a new world, a change in the total life of humanity, or at the least, a new perfected collective life in the earth nature. This calls for the appearance not only of isolated, evolved individuals acting in the unevolved mass, but of many Gnostic individuals forming a new kind of beings and a new common life superior to the present individual and common existence. A collective life of this kind must obviously constitute itself on the same principle as the life of the Gnostic individual. In our present human existence, there is a physical collectivity held together by the common physical life fact and all that arises from it. Community of interests, a common civilization and culture, a common social law, an aggregate mentality, an economic association, the ideals, emotions, endeavors of the collective ego, with the strand of the individual ties and connections running through the whole and helping to keep it together. Or where there is a difference in these things, opposition, conflict, a practical accommodation, or an organized compromise is enforced by the necessity of living together. There is erected a natural or a constructed order. This would not be the Gnostic divine way of collective living. For what would bind and hold all together would be not the fact of life creating a sufficiently united social consciousness, but a common consciousness consolidating a common life. All will be united by the evolution of the truth consciousness in them, in the changed way of being which this consciousness would bring about in them. They will feel themselves to be embodiments of a single self, souls of a single reality, illumined and motived by a fundamental unity of knowledge, actuated by a fundamental unified will and feeling, a life expressing the spiritual truth would find through them its own natural forms of becoming. An order there would be, for truth of oneness creates its own order. A law or laws of living there might be, but these would be self-determined. They would be an expression of the truth of a spiritually united being and the truth of a spiritually united life. The whole formation of the common existence would be a self-building of the spiritual forces that must work themselves out spontaneously in such a life. These forces would be received inwardly by the inner being and expressed or self-expressed in a native harmony of idea and action and purpose. So we see what's outlined there in the life divine, described and prophesized here, also in Savitri. And now he will continue describing this action of the supramental consciousness on the individual, but also on the collective life of humanity. So now let's begin. And I guess we can begin with Naren. And we're on page 706, about a third of the way down, beginning with the words, the immanent.
The supermind shall be the master's form, nature's form.
The immanent shall be the witness God.
Oh, witness God. The immanent shall be the witness God, watching on his many-petaled lotus throne, his actionless being and his silent might, ruling earth nature by eternity's law, a thinker waking the inconscious world, an immobile center of many infinitudes, in his thousand-pillared temple by time's sea. Then shall the embodied being live as one, who is a thought, a will of the divine, a mask or robe of his divinity, an instrument and partner of his force, a point or line drawn in the infinite, a manifest of the imperishable. The supermind shall be his nature's fount. The Eternal's truth shall mold his thoughts and acts. The Eternal's truth shall be his light and guide. All then shall change, a magic order come, overtopping this mechanical universe. A mightier race shall inhabit the mortal's world.
Thank you. Let's pause. This supramental being, or this Superman that shall come, will be ruled by the immanent divine within each individual. Each individual will be united with the divine within, which will rule his thought and will and action in the world. At the same time, he's describing here that the being, the Superman, will realize this silent witness consciousness of the divine behind, observing all. watching on his many-petaled lotus throne, his actionless being and his silent might, ruling earth nature by eternity's law. That silence will be the base, the foundation of the consciousness and the action of the Superman. And at the same time, this idea and immobile center of many infinitudes in his 1,000-pillared temple by time C suggests that this foundation, this base of the witness consciousness, the self, will be one in all. It will be the same center in all other beings. In that foundation will be found the individual's unity with all other beings. That is what will unify the individual with others, not this kind of constructed association or rules or laws that we presently have to try to bring us together into some sort of unity or association, some kind of organized collective life. Instead, each individual will realize his essential self, which is the same self with all others. So then shall the embodied being live as one, who is a thought, a will of the divine, a mask or robe of his divinity, an instrument and partner of his force. His outer expression through his individual nature will be just a natural outflowing from this inner divinity. Let's say a partial expression of it in that individual form. But at the same time, he will realize his unity with all others. It won't be his outer personality acting independently, trying to associate with others or to bring others under his own kind of command or power, like we do now. It will be just a natural outflowing of this oneness from within. Even his individual being will seem as if a point or line drawn in the infinite, because he will live in the infinity of his being. And this individual expression that he embodies on earth will just be one kind of aspect, one form that infinity takes, that has a special, unique relation with that self. So, looked at again from the side of the divine within, the supermind shall be his nature's fount. It's from that supermind that his nature will flow. The Eternal's truth shall mold his thoughts and acts. The Eternal's truth shall be his light and guide. And once the outer nature is unified with this inner truth of his being, then that outer unity of the collective can be formed. Like Sri Aurobindo said in The Life Divine, in the passage I read, that individual realization must come first, and then flowing out of that, he can find his unification with others and with the collective life of humanity. All then shall change, a magic order come, overtopping this mechanical universe. A mightier race shall inhabit the mortal's world. So let's continue, Margaret.
On nature's luminous tops, on the spirit's ground, the Superman shall reign as king of life, make earth almost the mate and peer of heaven, and lead towards God and truth man's ignorant heart, and lift towards Godhead his mortality. A power released from circumscribing bounds, its heights pushed up beyond death's hungry reach, life's top shall flame with immortal thoughts. Light shall invade the darkness of its base. Then, in the process of evolving time, all shall be drawn into a single plan. A divine harmony shall be earth's law. Beauty and joy remold her way to live. Even the body shall remember God. Nature shall draw back from mortality, and spirit's fire shall guide the earth's blind force. Knowledge shall bring into the aspirant thought a high proximity to truth and God. The supermind shall claim the world of light and thrill with love of God the enamored heart, and place light's crown on nature's lifted head, and found light's reign on her unshaking base.
Thank you. Let's pause. So he foresees this Superman, this, say, supramentalized being, perhaps still human by birth, but with this supramental consciousness, leading now the evolution, kind of a intermediate stage between or above the mental human being and the supramental being yet to come in a different, completely supramentalized form. But this Superman, this man with the supramental consciousness, will lead human beings and guide them towards their own higher destiny and lead towards God in truth man's ignorant heart and lift towards Godhead his mortality. A power released from circumscribing bounds. This Superman will have a much greater power than the human being. Its height pushed up beyond death's hungry reach. Life's top shall flame with the immortal's thoughts. Light shall invade the darkness of its base. This Superman will not only have this kind of supramentalized consciousness on its heights, let's say its mental consciousness will not only be enlightened, but all its being will be changed and transformed. Light shall invade the darkness of its base. So that light, that mind of light that Sri Aurobindo described in his last writings, will penetrate all the layers of his being. They may not be utterly transmuted into a supramental consciousness, but they will certainly be changed and enlightened, and the ignorance left behind. And then I find this very intriguing, this next sentence. Then in the process of evolving time, all shall be drawn into a single plan. A divine harmony shall be earth's law. Beauty and joy remold her way to live. Even the body shall remember God. So even once when that Superman is here on earth, that evolution of the earth consciousness will continue. Its influence on humanity and on the earth around will gradually grow and increase, leading humanity towards its own higher destiny and enforcing or creating a greater and greater harmony in the life of the world. All shall be drawn into a single plan. More and more, all of the life of humanity will be drawn into this circle of influence of the supramental consciousness and force.
Do you see there's no end to it? So
Right. Mm. Yeah, I think you're right that this evolution is a continuous process without end. So Sri Aurobindo in some places I just read, speaks of even a stage beyond supermind, when these higher levels of the unitary consciousness of Satchidananda would also be embodied here in the world. So, I mean, here we're just talking about entering into that, the first stages of that supramental consciousness. And I don't know, that consciousness itself is so infinite and its possibilities so much greater and wider than even the mental consciousness has, compared to, let's say, the animal consciousness. Our freedom, our possibilities of creation are so much greater, right, than the animals. But the supramental consciousness would be much freer and greater possibilities of expression and development than the mental consciousness, a whole nother order of possibility. And then beyond that, on its heights, it would open up into these infinities of the infinite existence and consciousness and bliss. So this evolution has a long, long way to go. And I don't think that there is any end point to it, as you're saying.
This was written about 70 years ago.
Mm.
And the Second World War, the worldwide war. So when?
Yeah, well, in the process of evolving time, as he puts it here. So he doesn't say this is all going to happen now. So that influence is working, I think it's definitely here. And it's probably putting pressure on all that needs to be transformed in the human nature. And as it puts the pressure on that, all of the, let's say, the dirt or the obscurity or perversities, all of that rises to the surface in order that it may be confronted and thrown out. Because as long as it's all hidden, if it's all kept unconscious, then it can't be dealt with. So it's brought out into the open. And I was just reading about this in 2026. It's the 100th anniversary of Sri Aurobindo's realization of the overmind consciousness and the start of the ashram. And at that period, or on that day, November 24th, this consciousness of Sri Krishna descended into Sri Aurobindo, into his physical body. And Sri Aurobindo explained that this was necessary and important as a step towards bringing the supramental consciousness forward. And he identified this Krishna consciousness as the Ananda Maya consciousness leading from overmind to supermind, so that it would assist in this evolution of the supramental consciousness. And at that point, then, the ashram was established and Sri Aurobindo withdrew kind of from meeting with the sadhaks as he used to do on a daily basis, I think, in the evenings, and put the mother out front. And also it was then that the mother kind of became known as the mother. This was just happening at this time and the months that succeeded November 24th. His book, The Mother, came out early in 1927. So that following year, and which described what was necessary. But the point I wanted to kind of bring out, this was that period, it was called like the golden period of the ashram, because there was all these kind of over mental beings that mother was in contact with, and she was bringing down into some of the sadhaks in the ashram, and they were kind of realizing or identifying with these gods, these overmind gods. And then Sri Aurobindo said, she had a conversation, said, well, he said, this is all very nice, you're going to be very famous, and you'll have, a great religion, but that's not what we're here for. We're here to establish the supermind and not this over mental creation. And then she put a stop to all of that. And then all of that kind of action, this occult action of these gods embodying themselves in the sadhaks stopped. And then there was a change in the whole consciousness of the ashram, and it descended very much into the physical level. And all of a sudden, people felt themselves very much in the external consciousness and no longer in these inner realms that they were feeling earlier. And they were then kind of confronting all of this kind of external and physical and vital problems within themselves. And all of that had to now be confronted in order that this super mind could descend. So there had to be this working, this churning of the external physical and vital consciousness. And so all of these problems started kind of coming up in the disciples at that time. And it was even apparently for Sri Aurobindo and Mother, also their consciousness changed, and they were also dealing much more with these kind of physical obscurities that were in the earth consciousness. So I think what's still happening is kind of a continuation of that process of kind of bringing out all of this darkness that's within the external and lower levels of the vital and physical consciousness of humanity, and of in the collective life as well, in its collective being, not only in the individual, but also in this collective life. All of these things are coming out because they have to be confronted, because that supramental consciousness is not something that can coexist with all this obscurity. It was found like that this overmind consciousness, it could operate, it could kind of continue and work in these beings, but their lower natures were not changed, were not transformed. All of that stuff remained. And so that's why that working was put to an end, so that instead of just working kind of on the heights of the consciousness in this, the higher mind and overmind and maybe higher vital, all those lower parts of the nature would be dealt with. So that, I think, is continuing. Mm. Mm. Oh, yeah, yeah. Right. Yeah, there was that date that was, or time period kind of put forth in a couple of places, I think, where they have suggested perhaps 300 years or so it would take. But exactly what happens at that point, but certainly something perhaps better than what we have now. So in the process of evolving time, so this, okay. Well, I think that the overmind has a great power. It's a great consciousness, but it didn't have the power to transform the lowest, the physical, to transform the body, and I think even deal perhaps with the lower part of the vital. So it has a great power. But one of the things that we also see in the latter part of Sri Aurobindo's life and work, inner work, was that he was working on the supramentalization of the overmind. So that was something that he's described. So where? I believe you find it in Record of Yoga, but I think you find it also, you can find sections or references to it in Letters on Yoga. But exactly where, I don't know.
What did you say?
Supramentalization of the overmind. So that overmind consciousness itself was becoming supramentalized. So that was also kind of a stage of development, so that it's also would have kind of like a greater supramental power and light within it.
Synthesis of yoga, or
I don't know that it's described in the synthesis, but I think there are references to it in Letters on Yoga, and I think in perhaps Record of Yoga, but I'm not sure. Maybe in some of those last letters, records of yoga, there was some from.
in a way, it is good to step back and go somewhere over my level or the wider level and to see what is going on, to act that in your life. And on the other hand, I also started this when we have to plunge and get lost in the creation.
So you're talking about kind of this maybe paradox or something of standing back and plunging. What?
The role of this, what can be the role of the overmind possibility? Step back, see.
Well, I don't know that one steps back into the overmind, one steps back into the kind of silent witness self, right? And from there, that is the kind of basis even of this supramental consciousness, or even, I suppose, of the overmind consciousness. One has to have this basis of the spiritual consciousness there. So that's where one steps back, and it's on that basis of peace and silence that one can act, and the dynamic aspects of one's consciousness proceed. And the level of that dynamic consciousness, can vary. It can be expressed at the overmind level, or at the mind level, or vital level, or supermind level. But that fundamental basis has to be there. But that's a kind of preliminary step.
What I understand is that stages of evolution from human mind into higher mind, lower mind, God of
Right. Yeah, there is this development of the consciousness through these higher levels of the spiritual mind consciousness up towards supermind. Okay, let's continue. Sonia. A greater truth?
Yeah. A greater truth than earth shall roof in earth and shed its sunlight on the road of mind. A power of infallible shall lead the thought. A seeing presence govern life and act. In earthy hearts kindle the immortal fire. A soul shall wake in the inconscious house. The mind shall be God's vision's tabernacle. The body, intuition's instrument. And life a channel for God's visible power. All earth shall be Spirit's manifest home, hidden no more by the body and the life, hidden no more by the mind ignorance. An unerring hand shall shape events and act. The Spirit's eyes shall look through nature's eyes. The Spirit's force shall occupy nature's force. This world shall be God's visible garden house. The earth shall be a field and camp of God. Man shall forget consent to mortality and his embodied frail impermanence.
Thank you. What I get a sense from this passage is of this Superman or supramental consciousness kind of taking hold of earth, kind of holding it, shall roof in earth, as if it will be there as a roof, as a kind of enfolding light and power, shedding its sunlight on the roads of mind. And from all those kind of surrounding the earth, infiltrating at the same time the earth and the minds of men and their life and their acts. And then it brought to mind an image that the mother presented when she was describing this Superman consciousness. And she said, well, that it was like this benevolent, powerful presence. And that she said it was like so great. She said, for it could hold like the earth in its palm of its hand. It was kind of like that. It was so much greater in a sense than the earth and the earth consciousness itself, and it just could hold it in its hand. And so I get this sense of this, very powerful, conscious being and presence kind of now taking up and enfolding the earth and gradually kind of enlightening and permeating it with its force and its light and its delight. And then we see its effect and how it will work in the mind, in the soul, in the heart, in the body, gradually permeating all the levels of the being. Yeah, the body will be intuition's instrument. The body will just instinctively know what to do. It will just do the right thing automatically. It won't have to think it through. And then even he speaks here also of the whole earth. So maybe he's looking a little bit, far ahead, but seeing the whole earth as God's garden house, a field and camp of God. It will take up, I think, the whole life of the earth.
How much happened already since 1956? And in this short time, so many changes happened. The moment you can maybe go to 300, because it's recognize big changes.
Yeah, we've had enormous changes since the advent of the supermind in 1956. 1956, I don't think we had computers yet, so much has changed. And then that change is only accelerating more and more. Let's continue.
This universe shall unseal its occult sense, creation's process change its antique front, an ignorant evolution's hierarchy release the wisdom claimed below its base. The spirit shall be master of his world, lurking no more in form's obscurity, and nature shall reverse her actions' rule The outward world disclose the truth it veils. All things shall manifest the covert God. All shall reveal the Spirit's light and might, and move to its destiny or felicity. Even should a hostile force cling to its reign and claim its rights' perpetual sovereignty, and man refuse his high spiritual fate, yet shall the secret truth in things prevail. For in the march of all fulfilling time, the hour must come of the transcendent's will. All turns and winds towards his all turns and winds towards his predestined ends in nature's fixed, inevitable course, decreed since the beginning of the worlds in the deep essence of created things. Even there shall come, as a high crown of all, the end of death, the death of ignorance.
Thank you. The first part of this is interesting in that he speaks of a reversal of the process of nature and its evolution. The evolution has been proceeding from the inconscient upwards towards greater and greater consciousness. But it began with this nescience, with this absence of consciousness. And so it's proceeded ignorantly. It hasn't, at least for the surface beings, the beings in the evolution, aren't really aware of where this evolution is going or how it's proceeding. And so humanity at kind of the higher end of that, doesn't know what it's doing. It makes mistakes. It goes in the wrong directions. It makes a mess of things. So that's where we're at. But this process will change. He says there's going to be a reversal, and that this process will no longer occur ignorantly. It says, an ignorant evolution's hierarchy release the wisdom chained below its base. So below that inconscient base from which the evolution has proceeded, there is a wisdom. Actually, the supermind is behind it. But it's hidden. It's obscured. Its process is not patently visible on the surface. Although the fact that it proceeds to release consciousness, that it moves upward, suggests that perhaps there is a hidden wisdom in it. But for the beings in that ignorant nature, it's not evident. But that's going to change as this evolution proceeds to, at a certain point, the top of that hierarchy, let's say, something changes. And the spirit within takes charge, kind of conscious charge of the evolutionary process. The spirit shall be the master of his world, lurking no more in form's obscurity, and nature shall reverse her actions' rule. The outward world disclose the truth it veils. All things shall manifest the covert God. So that divinity which is hidden in nature, hidden below the base of inconscience, will reveal itself, will come out into the front and take the lead of the being, take hold of mind and life and body, so that they no longer just evolve in this ignorant, meandering manner. Well, I think he's talking about in the earth life itself, so on a kind of a wider scale, but he's talking about when kind of this Superman comes into being, and now things are going to change. Okay, this Superman consciousness has manifested. It's taking hold of this earth, like I was describing before, and it's permeating it. And now it's going to draw all of it into a single plan. Okay, even the ignorant life of humanity is going to be moved, influenced by it. So it's not just for those supermental beings, it's going to draw all the world into its influence.
So they don't have to make efforts and yoga to go up. We all come from the top. Or does the human being or let's say animal evolve to higher and higher? Like it's part of the that supermental force takes over.
Yeah.
And how does it happen for the people who are not supermental?
Right. So you bring in an issue of whether the individual, the human being, needs to do anything, or it's just all going to be taken care of by the supermental force. Okay, Sri Aurobindo has said in many places that the will of the individual is important. So, but I don't know that we can necessarily divide it from the action of the supermental force. He sometimes speaks of the human will, our choice that we make, as one of its most important levers. So it uses our will also, but he's made it pretty clear in a number of places, he says that supramental consciousness can come, but if you don't open to it, it's not going to have much effect on you. You're not going to become supramentalized just by, doing nothing and, playing games or whatever it is. A concentrated, very disciplined action of yoga is necessary, certainly at this point of the game, of the evolution.
Next level, that even supermental, like you said,
yeah, but it works through the individuals. It permeates, okay? So it works through them, but it's going to work through their own choices and will. Right? So they're still going to be making choices. And until they choose the divine, they're not going to change much. Okay, but eventually it will include more and more individuals in it. More and more people will turn. More and more people will see the Superman or the Supermen around in the world. Let's say some individuals, evolve ahead of the others. They will have their influence on human beings. People will look up. If, Auroville ever comes into its own and becomes a true Gnostic community, then the world would also see the possibilities of a collective life based on, the supermind consciousness.
What does the end of death mean?
It means immortality. So he's saying that a time will come when the beings no longer have to die, the physical. They no longer need to leave their physical bodies. We discussed this a little bit last time.
I understand if our past action determines our future action and our destiny. So if superman that comes out of now the side issue. But whether the destiny, my ultimate goal, was as an individual soul, that you said each soul is unique, there's no one path, there's no one destiny.
Right.
So that destiny will change or not, that's his question.
Well, he is asking about death. What is the end of death? So I don't know if he's asking about destiny, but you could say the destiny of life on earth is to move towards this immortality, and we discussed this last time, for the Superman, let's say, this person who is born into a human body but develops a supramental consciousness. I think there is a point where it will have the choice of whether to leave the body or not.
And I think also the consciousness will be so much charged that even when the things line up and Irish or isn't here, that you don't lose your consciousness, that you're still conscious if the body is dead.
Well, that's another type of immortality, right? There is an immortality of the consciousness that we can have long before this physical immortality. I mean, all we need is a spiritual realization, which thousands of people have had, and they live in an immortal consciousness, in the immortal spirit. They live in that consciousness. And so death of the body for them, Mother talks about, it's like, you don't, get upset when you have to throw away your old shoes that have holes in them. It's like that. You leave your your worn out body behind and it's no issue. You,
it seems to me that we have to transform the mind, the vital, the physical too. So once the physical is completely transformed in Superman life,
right.
it becomes completely different. That's nothing to do with our present body, and it's immortal.
Right. Yeah. So I think that is also coming, but Sri Aurobindo talks about these two different stages: the Superman who is born into a human body, his consciousness becomes supermentalized. Okay, and his being really undergoes a tremendous transformation. So we look at Mother, she was kind of the forerunner of this. And a point I'm suggesting comes when that individual can choose whether to leave the body or not. There is another stage, the supramental being, who will eventually be born, but not into a human body. Sri Aurobindo speaks of kind of the divine soul materializing itself into a form. But that form is going to be different than our human body. That is also coming, but that's a later stage in the evolution. It's also what he is envisioning, and he might even refer to it, sometimes here in this. It's a later stage of what's coming, this supramental being on earth, in a somewhat different form. What it is, there isn't much known exactly what that form would be like. Mother speaks of seeing it in her inner vision, these beings who were kind of the color of Auroville, tall beings. They had the kind of a different substance, right? And then when she saw them on the supramental ship, right, then they were in different stages of transformation. Some were kind of darker, heavier, some color. Some were lighter color, more transformed. So, but this is, that's perhaps kind of seeing something of what would come in this supramental being.
What stage is Bhavan?
Well, I don't know. So there was this being who went into a cave and they closed the door, and then he is said to have disappeared in light, right? Is that him? So and they opened the cave and he was gone. So yeah, I don't know. There perhaps have been some beings who have individually realized the supramental consciousness. It hasn't ever become a wide-scale phenomenon on Earth, but I think there have perhaps been some individual cases of it, and so maybe those beings might disappear in light or something. That could be possible. Also, there are cases of other yogis who have lived an extraordinary long time, like hundreds of years. And then I've seen cases of where they were buried in the ground and unearthed maybe a month later, and then they came to life. So an extraordinary control over the physical body. So there are phenomena like that, but these are individual phenomena. of a few isolated individuals here and there. Okay, we've run out of time again.
All then shall change, a magic order come, overtopping this mechanical universe. A mightier race shall inhabit the mortal's world. On nature's luminous tops, on the spirit's ground, the Superman shall reign as king of life. But first, high truth must set her feet on earth, and man aspire to the eternal's light, and all his members feel the Spirit's touch, and all his life obey an inner force. This too shall be, so a new life shall come. Nature shall live to manifest secret God. The Spirit shall take up the human place. This earthly life become the life divine. The measure of that subtle music ceased. Down with a hurried, swimming, floating lapse, through unseen world and bottomless spaces forth, sank like a star the soul of Savitri. Pursuing her in her fall, implacably sweet, a face was over her which seemed a youth's symbol of all the beauty I see not, crowned as with peacock plumes of gorgeous hue, framing a sapphire whose heart disturbing smile insatiably attracted to delight, voluptuous to the embraces of her soul. Changed in its shape, yet rapturously the same, it grew a woman's dark and beautiful, like a mooned night with drifting star gemmed cloud, a shadowy glory and a stormy depth, turbulent in will and terrible in love, eyes in which nature's blind ecstatic light sprang from some spirit's passionate contempt, missioned her to the whirling dance of earth. She flower hidden in the heart of spring, the soul of Satyavan, drawn down by her, inextricably heaven in a thronging flight, soared past her as she fell, then all the blind and near attraction of the earth compelled fearful rapidities of downward bliss. Then, from a timeless plain that watches time, a spirit gazed out upon destiny. The prophet moment covered limitless space and cast into the heart of hurrying time a diamond light of the eternal speech, a crimson seed of God's felicity, a glance from the gaze fell of undying love.
Thanks to Sri Aurobindo.